The U.S. imposed sanctions Wednesday on 4 Chinese companies and vessels tied to Venezuela's oil sector. It's the Trump administration's latest move against Venezuela's Maduro regime. And this time, it also sends a rare but strong signal to the regime's close ally, Beijing. The U.S. Treasury announced the newly sanctioned firms on Wednesday. One of them is based in southern China's Zhejiang province, and the other 3 are based in Hong Kong. That's alongside 4 oil tankers with ties to those firms. U.S. officials say the global shadow fleet transporting Venezuelan oil has been serving as the regime's lifeline. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent also said the U.S. will not allow the Maduro regime to profit from oil exports while it floods America with deadly drugs. Zooming in on China's role in Venezuela's oil industry, China's private crude refiners account for about 1/5 of the nation's refining capacity. About 95% of the Venezuelan regime's revenue comes from oil, and China is its biggest buyer, despite U.S. sanctions. Just one day after the U.S. announced the sanctions, Maduro said his regime is willing to hold serious talks with Washington. That could include allowing U.S. investment in Venezuela's oil sector and cooperating with the U.S. on combating drug trafficking. The comments published on New Year's Day come as the U.S. ramps up military and economic pressure on the regime, accusing it of fueling the drug crisis in the U.S. Concerns are swirling after Meta's recent announcement to acquire Chinese-founded AI startup Manus. What does this mean for user data across Facebook, Instagram, and WhatsApp? CEO of business warfare and counterintelligence company Black Ops Partners, Casey Fleming, joins us to unpack it all. Casey Fleming, thank you so much for joining us. Great to have you back on the show.
Great to be here.
So Meta is set to acquire a Chinese-founded AI startup called Manus, which has relocated to Singapore, trying to separate from its Chinese roots. Now, it says it's different from rival AI developers with what it claims to be a truly autonomous agent. Now, this is reportedly worth about $2 billion, this deal. And Meta says that this deal would help improve its own AI through access to that agent, which can help, say, plan trips or, write papers and stuff. First, what is your reaction of this deal?
Negative. It's very negative because all technology coming out of China is weaponized against the West. That's part of the mantra of Xi Jinping and the CCP. We will weaponize everything against the West. So from a technology perspective, you can never trust Chinese technology wherever it ends up. So Manus was created in China by the CCP or under the CCP's watchful eye, and then they recently relocated to Singapore. So I guess there's no problem with that, but there is.
I want to delve into that a bit because what the co-founder, one of them, actually goes by the name Red. And then as the Wall Street Journal is noting, it does seem the company is trying to differentiate itself by, say, moving to Singapore and so forth. But it did actually announce a partnership, as in Manus, with Alibaba, which is the Chinese e-commerce giant, back in March. So there is that as well. And given that Meta under it, there's Facebook, there's Instagram, also WhatsApp. What does that mean in terms of American data on those apps? Could it go to Beijing?
In my opinion, it's guaranteed to go to Beijing. Technology and companies and business must adhere to CCP law of 2015, 16, 17, 18, and you must support national security, which means espionage, intelligence, stealing IP, stealing data, and weaponizing everything. So it's for us in the intelligence community, it's standard operating procedure by the Chinese Communist Party, and it's another example of the U.S. government looking the other way or just being out of pocket and out of the job. This should never have been approved. So yes, all of your apps on your phone, are suspect. And when you look at technology, it's extremely difficult. Let me just say it, impossible to unwind technology, to merge it together, because the original core will always be there. And again, it's weaponized against the West. So, those of us who've been working this issue for many, many years know that this is something that's very serious. AI is just at the beginning stages of collecting information, then also turning it around and using it against you. So it's all part of cognitive warfare. This is just another engine in cognitive warfare. And the U.S. government should have said, no way. No external technology is going to be able to hit the minds and the brains of our children, our youth, and our population. So we've got to protect our brains. It's called cognitive warfare underneath the large umbrella, which is unrestricted warfare.
Well, Casey Fleming, as always, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Less than a week after the U.S. rolled out its new strategy for the Western Hemisphere, China quietly fired back. It released a policy paper on Latin America that signals increased U.S.-China competition for influence in the region. While Beijing insists it won't budge in America's backyard, analysts say that stance comes with conditions, especially when Taiwan's in the spotlight. China's policy paper on Latin America frames Beijing as a key partner in the global south, arguing the global balance of power is shifting away from the U.S. Beijing has followed up on every major move from the Trump administration to reassert influence in the region. 24 Latin America and Caribbean countries are counted as part of China's Belt and Road Initiative. On top of that, it has overtaken the U.S. as the top trading partner for several regional economies. Beijing has condemned U.S. military pressure there, even as Chinese state media aired a simulated military war game showing Chinese forces operating near Cuba and Mexico. U.S. officials worry Chinese-backed ports could double as strategic military hubs in the future, including potential footholds in the Caribbean. At the same time, Beijing's top priority is clear: isolate Taiwan from countries that recognize its independence. 7 Latin American countries still recognize the island, and China is offering incentives to countries willing to step away. While the Trump administration's strategy doesn't name China, its warnings about debt traps, espionage, and foreign influence makes clear who Washington sees as the threat. The Pentagon giving Lockheed Martin an over $300 million contract on Wednesday to sell military equipment to Taiwan. The DoD says the contract is meant to meet the urgent operational needs of Taiwan's Air Force. It comes days after China staged a major military drill surrounding Taiwan. The State Department also called on the Chinese regime to stop its military pressure on Taiwan Thursday. During the drill, Beijing fired missiles and sent a large number of warplanes and naval vessels near the island. Taiwan has pledged to strengthen its defenses and protect its sovereignty in the face of growing pressure from China. President Lai Ching-te called for unity at home following recent Chinese military drills around the island. Help is on the way for America. Condemning the decision. A signal of deterrence or an act that could embolden Beijing. Debates are surfacing over whether the U.S.'s daring capture of Nicolas Maduro is an example for China, suggesting it could capture Taiwan's president in a similar way. NTD's Juliet Song has the story.
A swift capture of a sitting leader in the dead of night. The U.S. military's operation to capture Venezuelan leader Nicolas Maduro over the weekend has sent shockwaves worldwide. Now, opinions are divided on whether the Chinese Communist Party will pull similar tactics on Taiwan's president Lai Ching-te. Tang Jinyuan, a China affairs analyst, says Beijing does not have such capability. He noted that infighting within China's military remains intense. A little over 2 months ago, the Chinese regime ousted 9 top generals, including the country's #2 military officer and the former head of the theater command facing Taiwan.
The regime has already removed a good number of its own generals even before a war over Taiwan has begun.
Retired U.S. Marine Colonel Grant Newsham says China has been preparing for a similar operation for years.
They have just identical mock-ups of the Taiwanese government buildings, the presidential palace, out in the desert, and their special forces train constantly for such an assault, the so-called decapitation strike.
Despite Beijing's preparations, Newsham believes China's intelligence isn't as strong as it thinks. Hours before being captured, Maduro met with China's special envoy for Latin America.
If they sent their top delegate to Venezuela, and that the next day the Americans grab Maduro, and apparently the Chinese didn't know about it. You think if they did, they'd have told Maduro what was coming.
Tang says China doesn't have the ability to cripple Taiwan's air defense network like the U.S. military did to Venezuela. It's a key step in the operation before U.S. Special Forces reached the building where Maduro lived.
As the force began to approach Caracas, the Joint Air Component began dismantling and disabling the air defense systems in Venezuela, employing weapons to ensure the safe passage of the helicopters into the target area.
Tang Jingyuan says the seizure of Maduro sent a strong signal of deterrence to Beijing. The U.S. accuses Maduro of importing thousands of tons of cocaine into America.
Trump is signaling that if a country threatens U.S. national interest in any way, Washington will not stand idly by.
Tang added that the regime change in Venezuela is a blow to the CCP. He said the country is like a nail Beijing installed in America's backyard to distract the U.S., keeping it from focusing on the threat posed by the CCP. Juliet Song, NTD News.
拉丁美洲的委内瑞拉大约有1/4人口将近800万的民众出逃，等待了13年甚至更长时间，终于迎来一个独裁政权的垮台。那么其实委内瑞拉的独裁政权长期是受到中共当局在军事跟经济等多领域的支援。所以我要请教政治大学国际关系研究中心的资深研究员宋国成老师请教您怎么观察委内瑞拉变天的效应？那么这对中国大陆的社会舆论可能带来哪些影响？
我认为这次的变天应该叫做拨云见日了。我认为是委内瑞拉人民本身真正的解放日。注意你们的国家拥有全世界石油蕴藏量几乎排名第1或第2的这样一个地位，但是你们却被联合国列为贫穷线以下的一个穷困的国家你们等于是住在这个金矿旁边的一群乞丐。是我这么样的直言，为什么？因为你们承受了2届总统独裁者本身的集权统治，还有他的专制独裁所带来的这样一种悲惨的命运。所以今天委内瑞拉的命令就是 Maduro 所造成的一个结果，他的一个下台，不就是委内瑞拉人民重见天日的一个时候吗？那么另外我觉得还有一个真正的解放的意义，就是说是从此委内瑞拉希望能够彻底摆脱中共的控制。他们中共透过各种方式提供你一些根本不堪一击的一些假的武器或者没有这个效果的一个武器。这么多年来剥削了你们的石油的存量，剥削了你们的石油的价值让你们变成这样一个穷困的地步冤有头债有主，你们的冤头和债主就是中共。一定在这一次的变天当中里面要彻底的觉醒那么另外一个就是大陆的舆论民间会有什么样的看法呢？我觉得重新让大陆人民思考你们的所谓的习大大是一个什么样的一个角色他是不是也像这个 Maduro 一样也许程度有所不同，带给了中国人民如同委内瑞拉人民一样一个悲苦的一个命运所以我觉得应该就是双重的一个觉醒，一方面让委内瑞拉人民了解到一定要进行民主的转换，摆脱中共的控制，才能够从贫穷当中里面重新站起来，成为一个富裕的国家。另外对于中共来讲的话，大陆人民的一个觉醒也许有一天希望能够摆脱这个共产主义独裁体制，希望所有的中国人民也能够拨云见日，重见光明。
好的，感谢老师。